Donald Trump thought it would be just another normal day as he walked into the congressional hearing. But when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett asked him one simple question, everything changed. It was a question that made him lose his cool in front of the whole country. It was a tense Monday morning in late September, and all eyes were on room 2141 of the Rayburn House Office Building in Washington, D.C. Cameras surrounded the room. Cable news banners had already turned red, and the nation was watching as the president prepared to defend one of his most controversial executive orders, a plan to cut federal funding to sanctuary cities and revoke certain birthright protections. Jasmine Crockett was sitting calmly at the end of the row. She didn't seem scared. She actually seemed calm and patient, like she already knew what was about to happen. Even while aides muttered and staff rushed to finish last-minute details, her stony look never changed. She wore a burnt orange blazer. Finally, after 10 minutes, Trump came into the room. He was in his normal blue suit and scarlet tie, with Secret Service personnel and a line of nervous advisors around him. At first, it was hard to read his face, but as the cameras got closer, small indicators gave him away. A slight puff under his eyes, a clenched jaw, and quick movements toward the table. The chair brought the hearing to order, and the room went quiet. Thank you for coming today, Mr. President, the chair said. Trump leaned onto the microphone with confidence. Happy to be here. I believe we're going to make some things clearer today. There are a lot of liars and dishonest people out there. The people behind the press barrier moved around awkwardly. Journalists were surprised, but didn't say anything. The first set of questioning was the usual political back and forth, with legal language, evasive answers, and sound bites made for networks that would be sympathetic. But then it was Jasmine Crockett's turn. When her name was called, she slowly moved the microphone and talked clearly without looking at her notes. You keep saying that this executive order is for security, Mr. President. But who is safe? Trump lifted an eyebrow. For the citizens of the United States. Every one of them. She moved her head a little to the side. Your order, however, unfairly targets immigrants from communities that already make a big difference in this country's economy, infrastructure, and culture. Sir, isn't it true that your own Department of Justice told you not to use the language in Section 12 because it could be unconstitutional? Trump leaned forward and grinned. I thought it would be better. This is the same old junk that the false news pushes every day. I don't listen to what people think, Congresswoman. I answer to results. The room was filled with a charged quiet. Everyone could sense the mood change with just one breath. Crockett didn't move. She waited, letting the silence last long enough for Trump to look uncomfortable, before speaking again, calm and steady. Sir, with all due respect, results don't come at the cost of truth. People in the gallery started to murmur. One of Trump's aides got tense. The president's face showed a hint of strain, but Crockett saw it and kept going. Let's talk about the truth. Let's be honest about what today is actually all about. But the real heat was just starting. Crockett wasn't here to talk about policy. She was here to say what no one else would. She remarked, "You've talked about being open," as she quietly moved her chair. "You ran for office on being honest. So it's okay for me to ask you to explain some things that seem to go against the image you want to project." Trump looked at his lawyer, who nodded hard. Crockett went on, tapping the manila folder she had taken out of her stack. I have some internal emails here. They're not from reporters or your political rivals. They're from your own team and your own aides. The room got even quieter. No talking on the side, no coughing. Just the sound of cameras and equipment locking in. Trump tried to get her to go away. I know where this is going. Another trick, another ambush. Crockett raised her hand, but not in a showy way. Sir, this isn't about you. These are the facts. She gave damaging evidence, like emails about the First Lady's long absence from the White House, private travel plans, and Secret Service files showing that Mrs. Trump only spent 20 days at the White House in the last 3 months. Trump laughed and crossed his arms. So now we're talking about my marriage? Is this Congress or the Real Housewives of Washington? That's a joke. Crockett, on the other hand, wouldn't let it go. The American people have the right to know if the picture you sell is real or just a staged show with scripted appearances and the press team cleaning up after you. There was a soft shuffle in the gallery. Some reporters even whispered now. Trump's lawyers wrote down a lot of things quickly. Crockett stated, "You say that your policies are based on your core beliefs, but if that core is broken behind the scenes and your own household is a staged illusion, how can we trust how you govern?" Trump said, "That's none of your damn business." "You made it our business," Crockett said sharply. "You opened that door when you ran on family values and used your marriage as proof of strength." Trump moved very close to the microphone and spoke in a loud voice. "You don't know anything about my marriage. I know what your employees say about you when you're not around." Then he hit the table with his hand, making a loud pop. "You make me sick. Americans don't want this." Crockett didn't flinch. "That's exactly what I'm talking about." Everyone in the room knew something strange had happened. Trump had lost his calm, and she hadn't yelled once. She turned the page again. "Because this isn't just about where the First Lady sleeps. It's about how your administration keeps the American people in the dark by being secretive." Trump said something that couldn't be heard. Crockett didn't care. She kept going with testimony from aides who talked about how the president was getting more paranoid, refusing health checkups, and making strange medical requests on international travels, including personal garments that weren't for fashion but for function. There were gasps all around the room. A cameraman gasped. A reporter said, "Oh my God," in a low voice. Trump's face turned red, and then he said, "You're out of line. You are the president." Crockett's eyes were glued to every word he spoke. "This affects 330 million people," she stated in a calm voice. "You can't hide behind the desk anymore." There was a moment of silence in the room, and the tension was so heavy it felt like it was there. Trump, who had been through dozens of hearings before, was now clearly disturbed. His hands moved. His lips were squeezed together. Crockett, on the other hand, didn't brag. She didn't smile or raise her voice. She kept going, her voice calm and her sentences scripted but full of meaning. "Mr. President, I'm not here to make fun of you. I don't want to hear gossip about your personal life. But when your government wants everyone to believe them completely while disguising problems, that's everyone's business." Trump leaned forward and held on to the table. "Nobody wants to hear this. This is garbage. You're making the presidency seem bad." Crockett remarked directly, "People don't trust you. They've been told to believe one thing while seeing something else. So sure, I'm going to say it out loud." She showed more proof. Emails that said the Brussels summit was delayed because of security issues, but in reality, it was because of an unexpected medical emergency on Air Force One. Words like presidential garment concerns made people ask questions that no one expected. Trump looked at him and didn't say anything. Crockett kept going, telling about testimonies from former staff members who said that medical staff were called in mid-flight and that the chief of staff told them to keep things quiet. His face changed. It was blotchy and uneven, as if he were fighting with his feelings. Finally, he growled, "I'm not going to sit here and listen to disgusting falsehoods from ill people. You're a fake. You were sent here to make the president seem bad." Crockett stood his ground. "Not at all, Mr. President. I was chosen to keep it safe." Millions of people watching from their homes, offices, and airports felt the strain like never before. Another representative tried to speak, but Crockett calmly raised a finger to show that he still had the floor. She said, "Let me be clear. No one is making fun of medical needs. The cover-up, the denial, and penalizing whistleblowers who just want the truth are what are wrong." Trump hit the table again. "Falsehoods. You people are gross. You don't deserve this space." But the camera stayed focused. Crockett responded, "Mr. President, you've made your name by making people feel bad. From news anchors to families of fallen soldiers, crippled reporters, and your own cabinet. You now term it an ambush when someone brings a mirror up to your face? The chair of the committee tried to take back control, but Crockett had already taken the lead. When she closed her folder, her tone changed. People will wonder why I'm bringing this up. Because being responsible is important. Your job is really important. The country has a right to know if you can't carry that weight openly and calmly. Trump didn't say anything for the first time during the hearing. He kept looking anxiously between the cameras and the committee members. He understood he wasn't in charge anymore. But this moment wasn't simply happening in that room. Within minutes, videos of Crockett's strong speech spread all over the first internet. CNN went to breaking news panels. MSNBC broadcast her last words over and over again. Fox News hurried to change the subject. TikTok was full of reactions, tweaks, memes, and hashtags at the same time. The talk would never be the same again. The hashtag Crockett claps back was trending all around the world in less than 30 minutes. But the hearing wasn't over yet, at least not officially. Trump leaned over and whispered to his lawyer. Even though his microphone was off, his body language showed that he was tense. His shoulders were tight, his hands were shaky, and the sweat on the sleeve of his Navy suit was black. He had talked to the country hundreds of times before, but this time was different. Everyone could tell that he wasn't in charge anymore. Representative Biza sought to change the subject by asking about border infrastructure, but Trump quickly waved it off. Can't we? Can we simply not act like what just happened is normal and that we're going to overlook it? His voice was rough and strained from yelling earlier, and it was higher than normal. I come here, sit in this chair, and people I fired who are angry throw tabloid trash accusations at me. This is a sick coordinated attack, and you all just sit here like it's fine. The chair of the committee changed his glasses. Mister, you can answer the questions, President. No, I'm not going to answer. Trump cut in, his voice rising. I'm telling you what's really going on here. This angry little woman thinks she can get famous by bringing my wife and my health into it. What is this, a show? Those statements made the stillness more worse. Angry little woman. Crockett didn't say anything. She sat still, tapping her pen on her notepad. But the rest of the room moved around in an uncomfortable way. Biza put his palm over his mouth and coughed. Our other member whispered to a staff member, "Let the record show." Crockett stated in a low voice, "The president just used sexist language to talk about a member of Congress who is still in office." "Oh, here we go," Trump said sharply, his voice breaking. "I'm the bad guy now. You tried to get set up like that on live TV. Let's see how you react." He looked at the chair. Is this how you do things now? People may say whatever they want about the president, and no one cares? I believe that Americans may choose what they believe. Crockett stayed cool and focused. They can. Trump stood up all of a sudden. His chair made a loud noise as it moved back. You know what? Forget about this hearing. It's a joke. This whole thing is a joke. I won't give you anything else. His lawyers were scared. An aide stood up halfway, not sure whether to stop him or allow it happen. Sir, the chair replied firmly, caught off guard, you have to answer questions before the committee. The walls echoed with Trump's voice. Oh, now it's a duty? Where was that enthusiasm when she was hurling lies about me? Where were the rules at that time? Agents from the Secret Service got closer to the table. Someone whispered over the mic, Sir, we need you to sit. Trump yelled, I'm not going to let them do this. I rebuilt this country. I made sure we stayed strong. And now I'm being attacked with personal junk on live TV with diapers. Really? The word hit the room like a microphone that had been dropped. His friends even stopped moving. Crockett didn't say anything. She didn't have to. One camera zeroed in on her face. She was calm, not smug, and not happy, just still. Trump looked her in the eye. He said, now you should be ashamed. Attacking a man's family and his honor. There's no going back from that. Crockett finally said something, but it was so softly that the mic barely picked it up. You can't lose what you gave away yourself. The room came to a stop. Biza, who was nervously clicking his pen, stopped. Trump stood there for 3 more seconds. He then sat back down when he realized the cameras were still rolling and caught every quiver and shake in his hands. Not because he wanted to, but because leaving now would have made things appear considerably worse. He cleared his throat. Let's get going. But no one actually moved on. What happened in the hearing didn't only ruin the moment, it started a fire that burnt through every news cycle for the following week. The media machine was already 10 steps ahead by the time the hearing was over. President melts down on live TV. Crockett silences Trump in stunning hearing showdown. And you can't lose what you gave away. The line that shook the chamber were all big headlines available for every major news outlet. Those headlines didn't seem like much compared to the web growth. Clips of Crockett calmly taking apart Trump were put combined with split-screen reactions from the president. People on TikTok altered her voice over combat soundtrack and compared her to famous courtroom figures and movie heroes. Twitter was on fire. People said she was like David, fighting Goliath in the modern world. Some people analyzed every move she made with her body as if it were game footage from the championship final. A political podcaster wrote in a popular article, "No yelling, no insults, only receipts." Jasmine Crockett just transformed how politicians deal with power, and she did it while wearing a jacket that matched her fire. That night, cable news turned into a carnival. As pundits applauded Crockett's calmness, her face covered the screen on MSNBC. One presenter commented, "What we saw today was a woman ready to not only confront the president, but also show the cost of showmanship without substance." CNN aired the part when she remarked, "You can't lose what you gave away yourself," and then cut right to a pundit wiping away a smile. It was cruel, and he knew it. Fox News couldn't get away from it either. One anchor tried to make the exchange seem very disrespectful to the office, but the clip played nevertheless, and viewers could see for themselves how Trump was losing his cool. In the meantime, there was a huge rise in YouTube compilations and reaction videos. One person stopped Trump from talking and stated, "You know someone is losing the argument when they stop talking and start yelling." Crockett didn't even have to yell. But it wasn't only dazzling changes or buzz on the internet that hurt the most. The quieter times were when parents watched with their kids, instructors brought the hearing into classrooms, and older voters called radio shows to say they had never seen a fight like that. No yelling, no disorder, only facts and control. Jasmine Crockett's office got a lot of calls. Some were hostile, but most were thank you notes from soldiers, nurses, pensioners, college students, and other individuals who had never heard of her before that morning. She didn't say much for the first 24 hours, letting the emotion speak for itself. Her team put one statement online: integrity doesn't need a lot of noise. Truth doesn't need drama. Likes went up into the millions, but the president didn't remain quiet. Trump logged onto Truth Social and typed quickly just before midnight. The post went live at midnight. "Jasmine Crockett is a shameful member of Congress. She is a horrible, nasty person who lied, twisted the truth, and attacked my family on national TV." People in America saw through her act. It was artificial and fake. Within seconds, it was shared again, made fun of, screenshotted, and broken down. But something was different. His words used to generate a firestorm of agreement, but suddenly the top comments just quoted Crockett's hearing lines. People said that her restraint was like his outbursts. There was no denying the difference. Comedians on late-night TV didn't have to write jokes very often. One anchor quipped, "You know it's bad when the guy who used to control the news cycle is begging for a reset button." Crockett's team had more than 40 requests for interviews in one day. She was on The View, Morning Joe, Don Lemon Tonight, and even hosted a PBS town hall in Albuquerque before the end of the week. But it wasn't just about getting noticed. A college student questioned during a live Q&A, "Were you scared to face the president like that?" She smiled softly. "Are you nervous?" Of course, but not afraid. You don't have to yell when you talk about facts. When someone in charge starts ranting, it usually signifies they don't have the facts on their side. That one video got 12 million views in just 2 days. While this was going on, the White House was trying to deal with the aftermath behind the gates of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The energy inside was nothing like the storm outside. There was total chaos. 3 top staff members canceled public events by mid-morning the day after the hearing. There was no sign of Press Secretary Clayton Reams. In the West Wing, staffers whispered in the hallways, slid phones into their pockets, and tried not to be the next one called upstairs. Trump spent most of the morning alone in the private dining area next to the Oval Office. No news, no family. A TV screen was always showing news from all across the world. Crockett. The sound of her voice. Her picture. Her broken sentences, now cold captions. You can't lose what you gave away. Maybe you should be shaken by the truth. Not a show, but a statement. He had already yelled that once. At no one in particular. They aired a slow-motion video of him slamming the table and then looped it like a gif. He said, like I'm a cartoon. Nolan Crane, his chief of staff, paused at the door, not knowing if he should go in. Sir, Senator Whitlow is on line 1. She wants to talk about the plan for next week's floor. Trump didn't care that his chief of staff was worried. He added, tell her to call Ivanka if she wants to talk. Crane, on the other hand, didn't move. Sir, donors are worried that this will turn into something bigger if we don't control the story, he said. The phobie in the times and the porches timios and fori, the samviuba and the chilling digger, if we don't control the story, he said. The sir. President eventually turned to him. I am the story, he continued, although he didn't sound as sure as he used to. In the East Wing, on the other hand, Melania had stopped talking. Staff members said she hadn't talked to Trump since the night before the hearing. With no reason, her team called off a public presentation at the Smithsonian. When reporters asked her spokeswoman what she thought of Crockett's claims, they said no comment today. Finally, Press Secretary Clayton Reams came out of the communications wing. He looked tired, with red eyes, a wrinkled shirt, and a tie that was only half loosened. He remarked, we need to reframe, on 2 strategy calls with the RNC and White House lawyers. The immigration order is the main focus. Crockett made it personal. We act professionally. That's our turn. A worried advisor raised a hand and asked, what about the diaper claims? The rumors about health? Reams let out a loud breath. We don't get involved. We call it a concerted smear, which is a new low. But we don't confirm even one detail. Crane leaned in. We can't ignore it either. People are tweeting about the president's restroom habits by the millions. This thing has legs, even though it sounds dumb. The New Yorker is even writing about it. If we don't take control of the moment, it will define him. Trump walked into the room with his shoulders squared, but clearly angry. Do you want to own the moment? He looked Crane straight in the eye. Then find me a time when she made a mistake or had a skeleton. Everything you need to know about Jasmine Crockett. Everything. Nobody answered right away. Crane looked like he was in pain. We've taken her record, sir. No problems with ethics, no scandals, and no ugly divorce, just a clean voting record. Trump squinted his eyes. Everyone has something. There was an uncomfortable silence in the room until Reams stepped up and brought the conversation back to safer territory. We can push back with the help of friends. Senator Musin has agreed to make a statement on how this behavior hurts democracy. We tell that story and encourage networks to tell it again. Trump said they love both sides. Give them a reason. But as they planned how to fix things, more headlines kept coming in. An op-ed in the Arizona Sentinel wondered if it was time for the GOP to take 2 AC-28 seriously, which was an obvious reference to the dispute. It also warned that the elephant in the room may stomp on the whole stage. Inside the West Wing, the rumors got louder. How long would this go on? Not simply the scandal, but also the standoff. People saw a different Trump, not angry, not calm, but trapped. And the video? There was no date on it. The worst thing? Crockett wasn't simply famous, she was also real. Crockett wasn't playing defense as the president's team tried to uncover weaknesses in her armor. She was gaining speed. 2 days after the hearing, she strolled into a crowded town hall in Columbus, Ohio, of all places. No stage. There is no teleprompter. She only needed a folding chair, a handheld mic, and her typical no-nonsense manner. People in the audience were standing up. Some people clapped. A few people cheered. Some people held up signs they made that said, "Truth needs a voice," and you held the line. She smiled nicely and told everyone to be quiet. "I didn't come here to celebrate," she said. "I didn't attend to that hearing to get attention. I went in with questions that the American people had a right to know the answers to, and I didn't need to raise my voice." The facts spoke for themselves. She stopped to let it sink in. And I'm not done. The place went crazy. Later that night, she was on The View, where the presenters grilled her but never caught her off guard. "Did you plan the line for the diapers?" One asked a little too excitedly. Crockett raised one eyebrow. "I wasn't joking. I asked a question based on evidence from folks who had no reason to lie and everything to lose. If people think it's amusing, you could ask them why the truth sounds like satire." She was more than just a congresswoman. She was a political figure, a name that people searched for on Google, a face that voters immediately remembered. Confident, calm, and not troubled by the show. Her team was flooded with requests for interviews. Podcasts, radio shows, and even late-night talk shows were all trying to get her on. But Crockett was choosy. She turned down more than half of them, opting to speak where her message wouldn't get lost in dazzling visuals or pointless noise. One great moment happened on NPR's Weekend Roundtable. When asked what people connected with the most during the hearing, Crockett thought for a while and then said, "I think people are sick of being talked down to. They don't want any more show. They want someone to say what they mean without yelling or attempting to make it go viral. Be honest, even if it hurts." Dozens more people called in to listen. A retired postal worker from Pittsburgh said, "You made me think of Barbara Jordan. Relax. Very strong. Understood. That's what it means to be a leader." A teacher from Wichita said, "I played the hearing in class. In 1 hour, my students raised more questions on civic duty than they had all semester." Crockett didn't shy away from the accolades, but he also didn't like it. She instructed her team, "The attention will fade, but the message must last." That week, her re-election campaign got more money than ever before. The fact that 60% of the donors were under 35 and had never given money before was more important than the money itself. On her campaign page, one college student commented, "I wasn't going to give money to anyone, but the hearing let me see that not all politicians are just noise. You deserved it." Community activists in Memphis started Speak Like Crockett to get high school students to practice formal debate by watching her hearing tape. A local artist painted a mural in Deep Elm, Dallas, her birthplace. It had no words, just her face and the phrase, "Every line affects 330 million people." At that point, it wasn't a movement, but something was changing. Quietly, Democratic strategists started to wonder if Crockett was ready to lead. Not this year, but soon. People wrote op-eds on her and said she was someone to watch. But Crockett wasn't trying to get attention. She told her chief of staff in private, "I didn't come to Congress to be a star. I came to be a reflection. If folks don't like what they see when I hold it up, that's not my concern. That's the country's." As her voice was getting stronger across the country, the pushback was getting ready to hit. And this time, it wasn't just talk. The revenge machine started working on Friday morning. Quiet rumors from unknown sources made their way into conservative media, raising questions about Crockett's behavior, made fun of committee rules that were broken throughout the hearing, but didn't show any proof. It wasn't about the facts. It was about putting seeds in the ground. On Saturday, Representative Clyde Henshaw, a veteran Republican renowned for using procedural gimmicks, filed a formal complaint against Crockett. The resolution said she had insulted the honor of the presidency and made personal insults that were not appropriate for a member of Congress. Cable news jumped on it. Conservative hosts said it was vital to bring back order. Someone labeled her a shame in a power suit. But this wasn't the year 2003. Things had changed throughout the country. The talk has changed too. Crockett was at her Dallas district office on Sunday morning, and there were more reporters there than ever. She didn't read from a script or use notes to disguise her face. She spoke after looking across the room. The censure, it's not about being polite. It's about having power. I didn't yell. I didn't say anything threatening. I asked the president to explain things that don't make sense to the American people. Now they want to punish me for doing my job. She never raised her voice. She never sped up. She wasn't showing off. She was just sick of how everyone else acted. I was chosen to speak clearly, not to make power easy. A reporter from the area said, "Do you wish you hadn't brought up the rumors about his marriage or health?" Crockett looked him right in the eye. If he doesn't want people to doubt his honesty, he should stop lying. He should probably quit hiding it if he doesn't want people to doubt his health. That moment was shown all over the place. Even networks that had avoided the story showed the clip. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was calling the game. And people were paying attention. But on Capitol Hill, things were becoming serious. The censure resolution made it to the floor the next Monday. They called the vote. The final count was 214 for and 216 against. It almost worked. Moderate Republicans cast swing votes, and most of them were under a lot of pressure from their constituencies. Idaho Representative Martin Cordell said on the steps of the House, "I don't agree with how she said it, but I respect that she said it. And I respect that she did it without yelling." Crockett didn't have a party. She walked out gently and at the same speed as she walked in. But her crew could tell that the tide had stayed the same. Later that night, in a private meeting, her top advisor asked, "Do you want to make a statement?" She shook her head. "No. Give it to them." They put it on the floor. The people said no. That's the statement. While Congress fought over censure votes, Crockett's popularity grew. The town halls were full. People stood in long lines only to hear her talk. A teenage girl stepped up during a Q&A at a Tulsa community gathering. "You made me think I could speak up, even though I'm the only one in the room who looks like me." Crockett did not cry. She stretched out, grabbed the girl's hand, and said, "Take space if they don't provide it to you. If they don't give you the mic, get closer to it. Don't wait for permission to tell the truth." The next day, the line made the news. Critics pushed back, saying she was too combative, too intent on drama, and not enough on working with both sides. But none of it worked, because people had watched the video. They had seen the facts. They had seen her sit still while the president lost his mind. Every time someone tried to quiet her down, she merely got louder in a different way. Crockett didn't want to get back at them. She was ready to make it very plain to the country that she had something greater on her mind. Crockett stood alone at the podium of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library in Boston a week after the hearing. She had been asked to give a speech at a yearly meeting on leadership and public service. There were no signs for applause or standing ovations on cue, simply rows of seats filled with policy students. Historians, soldiers, journalists, and regular Americans who were still trying to make sense of what they had seen live on TV a few days before. The room got quiet when she stood up to speak. People thought there would be fire. She provided them something different. She started by saying, "I've had a lot of microphones in front of me this week, and most of them wanted to talk about the moment, what was said, how it went viral, and how it played on TV. But I came here today to talk about what happens after the moment." She stopped for a moment to let the silence settle. We live in a time when it's easier to lead than to practice it, and it's easier to manage headlines than to manage the truth. And I believe the problem with that is that we start to judge success by how much attention we get instead of how well we serve. It wasn't a criticism. It was a mirror that showed everyone, not just the president, but also herself. Being held accountable is not an attack. Being open is not being mean. Asking the most powerful guy in the country questions doesn't mean you're disrespectful. It means you're responsible. The audience leaned in. It wasn't a moment for a sound bite. It was something more unusual, a fact that was hard to dispute with. She informed the gathering what happened after the hearing. She walked home, took off her shoes, sat on the side of her bed, and didn't feel like she had one. Just a lot. She added that people were calling it a victory, but it didn't seem like one. It was like saying something that everyone knows is true, but no one wants to utter out loud. Then she took a breath and changed the way she spoke. I didn't like putting the president in that position, but I did what I had to do because we've been avoiding uncomfortable debates for too long because we're afraid of making things too politicized. But not speaking up doesn't defend democracy. Truth does. A guy in the back row coughed. Phil. A woman in front of me wiped something from her eye. Crockett went on, his voice calm and quiet. I don't want to be famous. I want to make sure that no kid who sees that hearing ever thinks that boldness means yelling and fear means asking questions. The line hit hard, not in a way that made people want to read it, but in a way that made them stare at each other. She talked about what public service should be. How politics was never meant to be a show, yet it had turned into one. And how slowly we all came to judge leaders by what they do instead of what they believe. I want people to know that it's okay to ask questions and speak the truth, even if it's hard and your voice shakes. It's especially important to do this when the room is quiet. It wasn't until she ceased talking that the cheers started. But it was genuine when it happened, not because she hurt anyone, but because she made people think that something may still be saved, that politics didn't have to be a never-ending show, that maybe, just maybe, dignity could win again. Later that night, when someone asked her how she was dealing with the stress, she just said, "Pressure only breaks what's empty." People started talking about what she said again, but this time it wasn't about viral moments. It was about morals. Editorials came in from all sides of the aisle. You don't have to agree with her politics to admit she reminded the country what integrity under fire really looks like, remarked one conservative commentator. A former ambassador wrote, Crockett didn't shame the presidency. She reminded it of its duty. The next day, the quote was on the main page of the Oregon Tribune. It wasn't only about diapers, tantrums, or news stories anymore. It was about something more. But Crockett knew that time passes, and if you want them to mean something, you have to make sure they leave something behind. 2 weeks after the hearing, Crockett met down with a reporter at a small community radio station in Dayton, Ohio. No cameras, no stylists, no edited sound bites. Just a room with poor carpet, a mic that makes a lot of noise, and a kind of honesty that national networks often miss. The middle-aged, soft-spoken reporter leaned in. People who are sick of the noise have made you a kind of symbol. They just want someone to tell the truth without starting a fight. Do you sense that stress? Crockett took a long time to answer. I don't feel like I have to be a symbol, she added. I feel like I have to stay human. Symbols don't get tired. People do. She looked down at her hands and then back up. That night following the hearing, I ate dinner by myself, not because I wanted to, but because I had to think. Not about headlines or cameras. I remembered a woman who emailed me later. She told me that she had never said anything at work when her supervisor went too far because she didn't think she had the right to. And after seeing me sit in that room and not give up, she said she had found her voice. She shook her head and almost smiled. That's what sticks with me, not the noise or the spin. The one person who saw something in her that she hadn't seen before. The reporter nodded but didn't say anything. He let the stillness last for a while, out of respect. He then said, if you could say one thing to the president right now, with no cameras and no recording, what would it be? Crockett didn't think twice. I tell him he still has a choice, she replied. He can keep acting, keep yelling, and keep hiding behind pride, or he can stop pretending and be honest with the country. That kind of honesty is hard, but it sets you free. Her voice had a hushed quality to it. Not out of spite. Not a win. It's a kind of clarity that only comes when you face power and don't blink. She went back to Washington at the end of that week. She had to deal with long committee sessions, floor votes, and inboxes full with angry emails and thank you notes. The roar had stopped, but the change was still there. She strolled through the Capitol now, and staff members who used to barely nod shouted her name with respect. People came up to her at airports not merely to thank her, but also to ask her meaningful questions about policy, leadership, and the truth. At Reagan National, one man gave her a handwritten message. It just said, "You made silence less comfortable. Thanks." And maybe that was the most important thing that came out of that hearing. Not the video that went viral. Not the outburst. Not even the political fallout. People at home saw the quiet courage and remembered that truth doesn't have to yell to be heard. That strength isn't in the sound of a palm slamming down or a voice rising. It's in the quiet that stays strong while power stumbles. We need more leaders like that, people who don't run toward attention, but also don't run away from the moment. People who are willing to speak honestly, even when there are cameras all over the place. People who know that holding someone accountable doesn't mean making them feel bad. It means asking the questions that other people are too terrified to address out loud. If you learn anything from Jasmine Crockett's fight with the president, it's this: being decent doesn't make you weak. Being clear isn't being mean. And calm truth can rock the room more than any yell. We need that type of bravery in our country more than ever, not just in Congress, but also in classrooms, boardrooms, and homerooms. It requires people who are willing to speak up, even if their voice shakes, even if they are the only one. Even if it makes you feel bad, because not saying anything doesn't help. Maybe speaking up will. If you believe in that kind of bravery, honesty, clarity, and leadership that doesn't just do things but genuinely leads, don't forget to sign up. There is more to come.